Fluctuations in the value of the new Taiwan dollar are not because of the U.S., Taiwan's premier says.
这次的讨论跟谈判内容从未涉及相关所谓的汇率问题。
A near miss. A relief package for U.S. tariffs has been rejected by Taiwan's opposition. Backing stronger engagement and better international participation, the U.S. passes 2 new bills in support of Taiwan. Plus, for the first time ever, Filipinos in Taiwan get to vote online in their country's midterm elections. A warm welcome to Taiwan Plus News. I'm Liao. The dramatic and unexpected rise in the value of Taiwan's currency has left consumers and financial institutions scrambling. President Liao has already come out to quell rumors that Washington has pressured Taipei to let its currency appreciate. Today, the head of the cabinet sought to do the same. Joyce Zeng has more.
Taiwan's president and top officials are clearing up any speculation about the new Taiwan dollar's biggest appreciation in decades against the U.S. dollar. They say that this has nothing to do with Taipei's tariff talks with Washington.
这次的讨论跟谈判内容从未涉及相关所谓的汇率问题。
The premier also denied that the government or central bank had previously intervened to keep the currency artificially weak, as an undervalued currency is advantageous for Taiwan's export-based economy. And Taiwan is listed among countries the U.S. Treasury Department monitors for their currency policies. This is all happening as negotiations to lower U.S. tariffs are still going on. Earlier, I traveled down to southern Taiwan to speak to industry leaders to see how they're managing the uncertainty as Taipei officials work to seal a deal.
Taiwanese entrepreneurs are putting their heads together to protect their businesses. At a recent forum in southern Taiwan, executives from a range of sectors got together to exchange ideas on how to globalize their businesses, a necessary step, they say, to survive.
I think everybody knows that we are an island type of country, right? So we have only 20 million people on the decline still, so there's no way we can go except going abroad.
At the event, hosted by Taiwanese alumni of the University of Michigan, executives shared their experiences operating in places like Vietnam, Germany, and the United States. Casey Kong helps Taiwanese firms invest in the state of Michigan. He says fears that U.S. production costs will be higher than Asia are valid, but that this does not mean investments won't pay off.
Certainly, there will be winner and loser. Higher costs don't always translate into higher margin, but in this case, I think if you focus on the U.S. market, maybe the new change might create more additional opportunity that's not currently in their business plan.
Alan Cheng also assists Taiwanese investors looking to expand in the U.S. He says entrepreneurs need to fundamentally shift their business approach, emphasizing soft-skill traits like courage and confidence to get a good deal.
可是我们台湾人通常就会点头 yes， 那这不见得好事，因为你现在没有把正确的声音讲出来，没有把你的意见讲出来，其实很多时候讨论是无效的。
As Taiwanese businesses wait to see what Taipei and Washington officials settle on, they're also taking matters into their own hands, determined to find ways to diversify to survive in an evolving economy. Kamashu, Joseph Wu, and Joyce Zhen for Taiwan Plus.
With a 32% U.S. tariff looming over Taiwan, policymakers here are scrambling to come up with a special relief budget to respond to those levies. Though ruling and opposition parties seemed to make headway last week, opinions are once again split on where money should be spent. Eric Gao reports.
Close, but no cigar. Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party has worked hard to push through the legislature a 410 billion NT dollar special budget, which at the current exchange rate is over 13 billion US dollars. part of that budget is to help Taiwanese society weather a potential 32% tariff from U.S. President Donald Trump, which is on a 90-day hold. The other part, according to Premier Cho Jung-tai, is to better prepare Taiwan to respond to what he calls the evolving international situation. To make his case, Zuo last week visited Taiwan's opposition Kuomintang and Taiwan People's Party legislative caucuses. That's because the ruling DPP does not have decisive power in that chamber. And his efforts seem to have paid off, at least initially, when the budget proposal passed its first reading in the legislature in the same week.
希望各党团能够签出不复议的同意书。我现在国民党签了，民进党签了，我等一下会跟民众党的党鞭来请求他们的协助。
But those prospects have seemingly fallen through. Both the KMT and TPP have just put forward their own versions of the special relief budget to compete with the ruling party's proposal. They remove items in the original DPP budget plan that they say have nothing to do with U.S.-Taiwan trade. One of those items is a more than $3 billion subsidy for the country's main energy utility, Taipower, which has been operating with multi-billion-dollar losses. It's an issue that has long divided ruling and opposition parties, stemming from disagreements over energy policy.
过去已经补贴了3000亿，补贴了3000亿，结果台电的亏损一样持续的扩大。
The opposition's proposals also slash things like talent acquisition and drone programs for defense. Instead, they want to dole out money to the public to help boost domestic consumer spending.
我再次强调，我们这次要解决的是经济的冲击，不是军事的一个冲突。所以，我们把这个1500亿把它省下来之后呢，真正我们把它放在民众消费的韧性，这就是我们今天的最大的一个重点。
In response, Premier Zuo on Tuesday once again called for cross-party unity. He also argued that giving cash to the public now is not the best way to solve the problems at hand.
此时此刻，是我们汇聚力量、积沙成塔，共同面对国际情势，对产业用集体力量来支持的最好时候，也是唯一最好的方法。只有团结在一起，力量才会更大。
The consensus among Taiwan's political parties is that this special budget is needed. But opinions still differ on how the money is best spent. And that is delaying much-needed support for local industries to cope with potential U.S. tariffs. Joseph Wu, Leslie Liao, and Eric Gao for TaiwanPlus.
One of Taiwan's biggest computer makers, ASUS, says it's well prepared to handle currency swings and U.S. tariffs thanks to its diversified business structure.
那中长期这部分的因，我想我们非常有信心。各位可能知道，我们透过这个多元的市场布局，那特别是包括说在这个非美元的市场布局，大概是超过50%啊。所以透过这个多元化的这个，一方面透过多元化的这个生产基地的布局，来提高我们营运的韧性。
Who was speaking in Taipei at a preview before Computex, one of the world's largest tech trade shows. The company says it will focus on AI hardware from servers to PCs, a strategy it calls ubiquitous AI. Executives from Intel, Amazon Web Services, and McKinsey also spoke at the event. The U.S. House of Representatives has unanimously passed a bill supporting Taiwan's participation in international organizations. It comes ahead of the World Health Organization's annual meeting later this month.
Let me be blunt. Beijing has waged a systemic campaign to erase Taiwan from the international stage. From the World Health Organization to the International Civil Aviation Organization, the CCP has bullied, bribed, and pressured global institutions and countries into sidelining Taiwan, despite Taiwan's clear qualifications and its contributions to global health, security, and commerce.
The bill says the U.S., as a member of any international organization, should oppose China's attempts to, quote, resolve Taiwan's status and encourage allies to reject efforts to undermine Taiwan's diplomatic relationships with other countries. It also added that UN Resolution 2758, which states that the PRC is the sole representative of China to the United Nations, does not address Taiwan's representation nor its sovereignty. Taiwan's foreign ministry expressed gratitude for Congress's bipartisan support.
台湾国际团结法案是美国国会以具体行动反制中国在全球 故意扭曲联大第2758号决议，以明确的国会立法来澄清事实，也特别具有意义。
The House also passed a bill requiring the State Department to conduct periodic reviews of its guidelines on relations with Taiwan. The two bills will now head to the Senate for deliberation. For more on what those bills mean for U.S., Taiwan, and China relations, reporter Reese Ayers spoke with Chen Fangyu, assistant professor of political science at Soochow University.
So what's in these bills exactly? Do they signify a significant change in the U.S.'s stance on Taiwan?
I would say that the U.S. Congress now enhanced its engagement with Taiwan, but there's nothing new. So it's an enhancement, and also it changed some new rhetorics to signify that the U.S. is now engaged more with Taiwan and now firmly against China's rhetorics and propaganda in the international organizations.
Could these amendments have any practical impact for Taiwan? Most recently, Taiwan has been campaigning to join the World Health Assembly that's happening later in May. Could this improve their chances of gaining entry into international bodies?
I would say that everything is possible. So we see that more and more countries, including EU, the Parliament, and also a lot of different countries have passed a similar act or resolution to support Taiwan. So if other countries see that Taiwan is now very important, then it is highly likely that Taiwan be engaged in the international organizations and related activities. Still, we are very difficult to enter in the formal meetings because of China's pressure.
And what's next for these bills? Are they likely to pass the Senate?
I think it's highly likely to pass the Senate because there's no one objecting of these acts. So the U.S. is clearly defines that it has adopting a whole of government approach on the competition with China. So fighting against China's legal claims on the Taiwan issues and the Taiwan Strait related issues are very important for the U.S. as well. The U.S. has made it very clear that it is against China's all of the legal claims on this area. And also, I think the most important part is that the U.S. is signaling that it opposes any unilateral change on the cross-strait issues.
That was Chen Fangyu, assistant professor of political science at Soochow University. Penalties could soon go up for drivers who hit pedestrians after failing to yield at crosswalks. 83 of the 366 pedestrians killed at crosswalks last year were hit by drivers who did not yield. A new proposal that could take effect in June would raise fines on drivers who hurt people on foot while on a crosswalk. The fine for minor injuries would rise from $240 to $600, while the fine for major injuries would double that to $1,200. A plan to extend Taiwan's high-speed rail line to the East Coast is splitting opinion. Opponents question the plan's transparency and value, but supporters say it will help an underdeveloped part of the country catch up. John Van Triest reports.
Protesters gather outside the Environment Ministry to voice concerns about a project that could bring big changes to Taiwan's rural East Coast, changes they do not want. The plan is to extend the country's high-speed rail line by about 60 kilometers, cutting through the mountains to link Taipei and the eastern county of Yilan. It's meant to ease congestion along the narrow East Coast rail corridor and cut travel times. The Transportation Ministry envisions a 27-minute trip from Taipei to Yilan, just 5 minutes faster than ordinary trains. But the idea is that passengers headed further down the coast can catch an ordinary train in Yilan and in some cases shave off nearly an hour of travel time. Officials have just started Phase 2 of the Environmental Impact Assessment, and for water at least, things are looking good. The line will completely avoid the catchment area for the important Feicui Reservoir. But the environment isn't protesters' main concern. They say the feasibility study was lacking, and with just one public hearing, there wasn't much chance for citizen input. They also balk at the roughly $7.7 billion price tag for a line that will only cut 5 minutes off the Taipei-Yilan trip.
这个可行性研究本身就是一连串的骗局，根本是把外快当作是本业在做。
Some say other positive effects will be limited. A report that goes along with the plan shows a 55% boost to Elon's businesses and a 21% boost to land values. Too little in some views. And there are worries land could be appropriated to build the bridges and dig the tunnels that will make up 98% of the route.
这些都是会大大影响居民的土地权益，可是铁道局也没有说。
But supporters of the project are outside the Environment Ministry too. Some Elan politicians are among them. They say the rail line will help the East Coast catch up with the more developed rest of Taiwan, and that the time to build it is now.
所以人定咧讲的就是讲，今天不做，明天会后悔。咱以后要变做一个进步、现代化、方便、好的城市。啊，你大家讲好唔好啦？
The Deputy Transportation Minister also backs the plan, calling it a way to balance development between regions, boost local business, and spur population growth. But the government isn't pushing through the project just yet. After a day-long meeting, the committee in charge of the environmental impact assessment decided it needs more information to move forward, meaning the controversy over the project won't be over soon. Howard Zhang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
China's military is still facing major corruption issues. That's according to a New York Times op-ed following reports that top People's Liberation Army General He Weidong, once in charge of planning a Taiwan invasion, was sacked. So what could this mean for China's military readiness? Defense reporter Jaime Ocon spoke to GlobeSec Associate Fellow Bryce Barros to find out.
I want to first start off with, in the past couple of years, we've seen at least a dozen PLA officials and high-ranking government officials get purged as part of this effort from Chinese President Xi Jinping to manage corruption. Let's first start off with painting a picture. How big of a problem is corruption in the PLA?
Corruption is a very large problem within the PLA. It's a systemic issue, and it's related to the PLA being a party army, not a national army, and lacking that national sort of character of being nonpartisan, being as apolitical as possible, means that it loses various checks and balances that make a military even more ready because it's not focused on engaging in very deep politics, right? So having an independent judiciary within the military, inspector generals, meritocratic promotions as much as one can have. Those are all things that get impacted by not having corruption, or rather our products of not having a corrupt system. And whereas the PLA doesn't have all that because it is a part of the CCP itself, and the CCP itself has a lot of issues that are systemic related to corruption.
So let's talk a little bit about the operational side of corruption in the sense of how it affects planning. Of course, when we look at, it looks like a good number of these corruption cases are coming from the Eastern Theater Command. Want to get your thoughts on how that affects planning in terms of a Taiwan contingency. Why is getting rid of corruption in that theater level command so important for operations around Taiwan?
So to answer that question, I want to separate the theoretical versus what has actually happened in practice. In theory, Xi Jinping and other members high up within the CCP, as well as anyone that's leading the PLA, CMC, and whatnot, they should want to make sure that that command in particular is not only loyal to Beijing, right, and make sure that they're loyal to the party itself, but they have minimal issues so that they could go ahead and have the readiness and the capability at the tactical, operational, and strategic levels to do whatever they need to do related to a Taiwan or East China Sea contingency. That said, separating the theoretical versus the practical, I do think some of the issues that you've seen related to Eastern Theater Command show that there are concerns that Xi Jinping or other people that are high up in the party have related to going into the fourth term, right? So even though in theory that particular command should have a better grasp on corruption so that they can execute Taiwan contingencies, East China Sea contingencies and whatnot in a better way, there are still issues that they have within it because people that are higher up in the party might not fully feel comfortable with certain commanders, leaders, and whatnot being close with other potential rivals or other figures that could be viewed as potentially usurping or undermining Xi Jinping's sort of control within Beijing.
And is there a specific branch within the PLA that maybe more corruption cases are popping out more than others?
I can't name any specific sort of stats off the top of my head, but I can speak to some of the recent cases with the PLA rocket force, related to having water being used as like, a fuel instead of actual, gas or whatever for weapon systems, right? I mean, that's a huge example of where corruption and readiness and the idea of wanting to save face for those commanders potentially, or just not want to explain any of the problems that they might have, undermines the readiness to be able to execute missions related to the area of operation or the area of responsibility for Eastern Theater Command related to a Taiwan contingency or something related to East China Sea or anything tied to Japan.
That was Bryce Barros, Associate Fellow at GlobeSec. The Philippines says it has escorted a Chinese research vessel out of its exclusive economic zone, or EEZ. Manila says the Tansuo 3 research ship entered its EEZ 92 nautical miles off its northern coast. It sent a Coast Guard ship and aircraft to monitor and challenge the ship. Experts say the Tansuo 3 is capable of undersea mapping activities which could aid China's military. During the operation, the Coast Guard also spotted a deep-sea submersible and other equipment near the Chinese ship. It says these are part of illegal Chinese marine research activities in its EEZ. The U.S. has sanctioned a Myanmar warlord, his 2 sons, and the militia he leads for cybercrime and human trafficking. U.S. authorities say Saw Shit-du, head of the Karen National Army, runs a lucrative cyber scam operation targeting Americans. The U.S. says the warlord's criminal enterprise is run from a militia-controlled town near the border with Thailand. Criminal gangs linked to both Myanmar's junta and rebel forces have used cross-border scam operations to fund their war efforts. The UN says criminal gangs in Southeast Asia have trafficked hundreds of thousands of people in recent years to work in scam centers. For the first time ever, overseas Filipinos, including in Taiwan, are casting their votes online using their personal devices. They are voting in their country's midterm elections, which will be held in the Philippines next week. While other countries have done it before, both Filipino voters and analysts are raising concerns about its safety and integrity. Gino Lopez reports.
From the comfort of this migrant shelter in New Taipei City, Filipinos Mina Macarag and Robert Ganado are casting their online ballots for midterm elections in their homeland, over 1,000 kilometers away. It's the first time Filipinos abroad get to vote via the internet, and Taiwan is one of only 77 trial locations. It's convenient, they say, but also concerning.
It's easy actually, it's efficient, it's quick, but at the same time there's not much guarantee of like transparency to it.
More than 1 million Filipino voters are overseas, 2% of the country's total voting population. 50,000 of them are in Taiwan. Back home, more than 18,000 seats are up for grabs. From the National Senate down to local representation. Since 2004, overseas voters have been able to participate in the polls. But they had to send a physical ballot to designated posts or appear in person at Philippine embassies and consulates. But that's now changing.
People can also cast their votes through their personal devices through these kiosks here at the Manila office in Taipei, where they can receive support from the de facto embassy staff. While some have touted online voting as the potential future of elections, others fear that this innovation could hinder democracy itself.
With concerns circulating of potential fraud and a lack of transparency, the Manila Economic and Cultural Office in Taipei has assured Filipino voters that the process is safe and reliable.
First and foremost, this is encrypted. This does not depend on internet. There are 2 contractors, one that is doing the operational, and there is another independent contractor that is checking, acting as a check and balance on the system.
But voters here remain divided. Reports have surfaced of glitches, where voters can't select their desired candidates. While others are upset, their finished ballots are hidden behind encrypted QR codes, which can't be accessed until the last online voting day, leaving some to worry if their ballot was cast correctly.
you can't check if you cast the correct vote. Meanwhile, if you write it on paper, you can really see the receipt.
For me, I also have doubts, but let's just trust the process because it's the responsibility of every Filipino to vote.
Their anxieties aren't unfounded. Philippine elections have a complex history marred by irregularities and allegations of fraud. But despite the complexities of online voting, poll watchers like Contra Daya or Against Fraud are not totally opposed to the idea of making it more broadly available.
Now, do we welcome it? Definitely, but there has to be transparency and predictability in the process. Now, similar to the automated counting machine, we also demand genuine source code reviews for internet voting. And of course, between proprietary software and open source, we prefer open source.
The Philippines Electoral Commission is hoping that half of all overseas voters show up to vote. But with just days to go, only 12% in Taiwan have cast their votes. Experts say that glitches and lack of information about online voting must be addressed before that target can be reached. And to make sure that this step towards convenience does not instead leave voters behind. Isan Chen, Kamashu, Sandy Chi, and Gino Lopez for TaiwanPlus.
And thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally today, let's end with this bun-grabbing competition in Hong Kong. It's a century-old tradition meant to ward off disaster and bring peace. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.